you'll find that most people in the department at some point will probably compromise themselves to get what they want.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Yeah.
Because not everybody was as fortunate as you to have that strong foundation. A lot of those foundations that were around you were built on sand. And you saw some people destroy themselves.
Yeah.
I know you did.
On the regular, actually. Yeah. And again, going back to, I at that time, how much emotional intelligence do you have? How much life experience do you have as a young 20-something-year-old? You think you do. But, comparatively to my 52-year-old self now, it's a couple drops of common sense. But yeah, I mean, it's well,
you see somebody getting jammed up, and you as a young man, because I know I'm very guilty of this. This is what I did. Oh, this guy's what a jerk, what an idiot. He ruined his life. He ruined his career. Nobody ever asked why.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where I was going with it. You beat me to the punch. Right?
I'm sorry about
that. Yeah, no. Well, yeah, you're on my
could just
channel,
end it
man.
right now, then.
We're on the same channel. I think back in the day, it wasn't talked about. It was like the scarlet letter A. You knew who the guys were that were, and I use this term sort of loosely with air quotes, functional alcoholics, right? I knew plenty of those that I work with. Actually, some of them are some of the best cops I've ever seen at work, most of the time. In their personal lives, they were disasters a lot of time. But you knew those guys, and you saw them, and
oh, he's okay. He's good at work. He's okay. Yeah. He's all right. Yeah. But we've also, and I won't mention names, but we spoke about this. I remember when I was a kid, one of my friends' parents lost their job in your department because they got caught with something they weren't supposed to get caught with. And I remember thinking in my head, cops do that stuff? I was that young where I go, you mean cops are, like, I didn't understand the concept of a dirty cop.
Yeah. But
there was a reason behind it.
Yeah. There's a good saying, a good buddy of mine, Dr. Lou Schlosser. I don't know if you know. Yeah, Dr. Schlosser. He's one of the most well-known police psychologists. I mean, not only in New Jersey, but in the United States. He uses this phrase, and I use it all the time. I have to give him credit for it, though. Risky behavior, undesirable behavior is often a sign of unwellness, right? So, but back then, like you just said, you're like, this guy's jacked up, man. What's going on here?
So you're telling me riding a wheelie on a Harley down the Parkway in the Absecon area, somebody might have done this, or jumping out of an airplane, or stealing from pre-construction houses. That's risky behavior?
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, like taking...
it could be viewed.
Check.
It could be viewed.
Taking hot tubs.
Taking hot tubs. Yeah, in a place somewhere in Galloway.
And then getting mad when someone stole your hot tub that you stole.
Correct. But yeah, but that all, and listen, a lot of things you're saying, I'm speaking not to down the person that got caught, because I did live that life for a very, very long time. And it's taken me twice as long to try to get out of it. And that's why I'm interested. When did you start noticing the mental health being something around as something that needed to be focused on within the department while you were still active? Because I know you matriculated through your department.
Oh yeah. Well, I started to see, those guys and girls really who, were the functioning alcoholics, and they had, in their personal lives, you're talking 2-3 marriages, just completely broke. Not in a good space in their personal life. And you look at them and you think, man, what's going on there? But again, it was not something that you went out of your lane, so to speak, and went up to somebody and said, hey, you okay?
It's their life.
Exactly. Mind your own business kind of deal, right? Don't be a rat. It's none of your business.
Like you said,
worry about yourself.
Before, as long as they're okay in work.
Yeah.
Do you really care about I don't want to say you don't care what's going on in their social life, but
you don't want to piss people off. You don't want to
overstep your boundaries.
Overstep your boundaries, exactly. So, but I definitely noticed things going on, and a couple of people who I cared about, and then there's been a number of suicides in Atlantic City PD. There was upwards of about a dozen during my 25 years there.
There was a rash of them not that long ago. There was a rash.
Yeah. So I knew every single one of those people. 3 of them were, guys I would consider like brothers to me that I knew very well, that I worked with. And I knew something was wrong.
Well, did you ever get that survivor's guilt? Because I know this has happened to me. I'm not sure about Mike, where you lose somebody along the way to a suicide. And man, if I just would have like opened my damn mouth and just said, just checked on him, just made a phone call or say, hey, let's go get something to eat. Let's go get a cup of coffee, something. Did that ever come across when you started losing these guys?
Of course. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to, right? And you think like, man, why didn't the department see something? And I'm not throwing a dart at the PD. I mean, this was a blind spot in the profession. Right?
This is a culture.
It's a culture. Yeah. I'm not blaming the police department. We didn't have the knowledge that we do now. It's not an excuse, by the way. It's not an out for them. That's when I started to see it and started to think like, hey man, we've really got to like start taking care of ourselves and like, ask people if they're okay. And this is at the time where I started to get promoted. Eventually, came into upper ranks, mid-level management, lieutenant, captain, and there's only so much you can do as a sergeant, right? I mean, you're still, I still wanted to be one of the guys. I was still out on the street. I had some really great opportunities. I became the youngest commander of the street crimes unit. I was a young sergeant, and I was still in that mode. And then one of the guys in the unit actually died by suicide in my unit. So that was a devastating loss to all of us. And
I love the fact that you don't say commit.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
we had our vocabulary changed, Mike and I, by somebody who lost their son to suicide, and like everybody else, I accidentally said, "Hey, he committed suicide." Like, no, and he was very respectful, and he did it in such a way, but he was direct. He said, "No, it's not commit. It's lost."
Yeah. Well, language matters, right? And that's what people say, and it's true. So that was devastating to everybody in the unit, and we were all asking ourselves why, because when I tell you, I mean, this was the quintessential. Nobody had a clue. Nobody.
Probably like Joe Cop that.
Oh, this guy, yeah. I mean, his name,
Joe. He just exuded cop.
He was the star of the unit, and we had 12 guys who were all superstars. He was a megastar. That's how, how it was back then. But so there's a lot of questions of why and what could we have done, and we still talk about it to this day, to be honest. But so that was certainly one, and there was a couple of others. One guy I went to the academy with. He was not a member of the PD. He was a member of another agency. And so those were things that really started to change my thought process on wellness, certainly for myself, and then for the folks that I worked with, and that I got to supervise, got promoted to lieutenant and captain, and this started to really become something that mattered to me. And
now you have the power actually to change policy.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Now I had a little bit more influence on decision making. But, there's always, until you're the top dog, you always have somebody over you who may not see it the same way you do. So, we started to enhance things. We started to we built a state-of-the-art gym. I thought it was really important to start with that physical part, then to start coming out and talking about mental wellness and stuff, because it still was not part of the operational vernacular, right? It wasn't part of the language.
You got to backdoor it. And so that's my language, because that's what I tried to do. My gym was there was one Nautilus machine. That was it. And it was in the break room where everybody ate lunch. So there was no physical fitness. Nobody put any, because I believe, as Mike believes, is if your body is sound, it helps your mind. It's not going to make your mind 100% clear, but at least it helps.
Sure.
So that's a step in the right direction. And that's all you want to do is move forward.
Right. I wanted to try to restore some camaraderie in the department too. So, we endeavored on this project. I was the project manager, and I went to the PBA and I said, "Hey man, look, here it's probably going to cost us, upwards of around $100,000. And I know that we can't ask for $100,000 from the PBA, right? We could get a significant amount, but because you're a nonprofit, we can go out and fundraise. We can ask people to donate." So I said, "Look, I'm so serious about this. Here's all I'm going to ask from you, that you guys match whatever I raise." They took a vote on it, and it was almost unanimous, the whole body. Believe it or not, there were a couple of people that said, "Well, what do we need a gym for?"
Yeah, exactly.
And my response was, if you're asking that question, there's a lot of more things that you need to look inward, about yourself. Anyway, I raised about $40,000, and the PBA, to their credit, they matched it. So we had about 80,000 and change that we had. And then we had some other donations. It wound up being a little over 100 grand, but we were able to get like what they call government pricing, GSA, and we got everything for cost. So we built a gym that probably would have cost $250,000 in ACPD, all brand new equipment. And, that was an attempt to raise awareness around, your physical health, to impact your mental health, and to restore some camaraderie, to make everybody feel comfortable in there. As much as I was a meathead myself, powerlifting, and I loved lifting since I was a kid. I didn't want it to be like that, where a bunch of iron was thrown around. Yeah, you could do that, but I wanted everybody to feel comfortable. So we had cardio, we had machines, we had a good mix of stuff. And to this day, it's very impactful in the organization, and it's something I'm pretty proud of. So that's where we started with that, and we started to move towards doing some other stuff. And it was more about paying attention to the traumatic events that occurred, especially the shootings, because we had a string of officer-involved shootings. My last, I want to say 5 or 6 years on the job. I mean, there was at least one per year or a couple per year. When I saw officer-involved shootings, we shot and killed, half a dozen people in that time frame. They were all 100% justified and legal, proper uses of force, thank God. But I also saw the fallout from those things where we lost some really good people that left because, it was a burden that they carried, taking a life. So
believe me, I know. I mean, you feel like you're a burden to everybody. You feel like you're a burden to your department. You feel like you're a burden to your family.
Because all of a sudden you wake up one day and you don't recognize yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were textbook shootings. That just goes to show you, and for the public to understand, whoever is non-law enforcement, listen to this. Even when it's 100% justified, legal, proper use of deadly force, there are still inherent things, your humanity, that makes it unnormal or not normal, abnormal, is that the word, to take the life of somebody else, even a person who is threatening your life. It's a difficult thing.
We're not signing on to this job to be criminals. I remember it was right before I got on, there was a shooting in my town, and the suspect was killed, and I knew the guy. And I remember asking him, I was like, yeah, but it was a good shoot. I remember just telling him, yeah, but it was a good shoot. And he goes, but you don't understand. I took somebody's life. And the guy was a bad guy. I mean, he was probably the best car thief in weapons, drugs, gang member, like hit all the marks. But he goes, you don't understand. I took somebody's life. Never, ever did I forget those words coming out of his mouth.
I still wrestle with that every day. This guy, whether bad guy or not, in my incident, he had family that loved him. He had family that thought he was a salt of the earth guy. And, he was a provider for the family. His method of providing might not have coincided with, our plan in law enforcement. But he still had people that loved him, and he's never going to go home again. And I take that to bed with me every night.
Yeah. Training can prepare you for a lot. I don't know that it ever prepares you
for the aftermath.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, they don't make a bulletproof vest for your mind.
That's right. I mean, you can train, obviously, your draw, the speed, get, coming on target, your breath, everything.
Grab your front sight.
Yeah, of course, all these things, right? And certainly training helps with that. But, taking a life is not a normal thing for the human brain to process, let's face it. And you don't need to be a scientist or a psychologist to understand that. And so that's kind of what led me into that path.
It's part of the reason that we study serial killers, and serial killers' lives are so fascinating to us. I'm guilty of it. You watch a documentary about Kuklinski or something. As a matter of fact, the guy who prosecuted Kuklinski lived in the town I worked in, and he used to walk at 2:00 in the morning. His name's Bobby Carroll.
That's the Iceman, right?
That's the Iceman.
Yeah.
His name's Bobby Carroll, and he used to walk with another guy named Paul Smith, who was also involved in that investigation, worked for the state police. I used to stop them and just, I was like almost a fanboy, just grilling them, because I'm trying to understand how somebody can kill so cold and so heartlessly and get through it. And they would tell me all the details that you don't see on TV, and that was a really big eye opener for me. But it was a fascinating, and it's kind of the reason why people are fascinated. It's the point I'm trying to get to. Now what's
a fascination of the unknown?
Yeah,
because you don't know what they're thinking. So now you're fascinated with the hell is going through this guy's mind.
So you make it up to deputy chief. okay, and it's time to pull the plug. You've done all this great work. That gets to most people, where this job that you loved for 25 years, 30 years, however long you did, is over. You go into work one day and then you never go back to work again. How did you deal with that?
Yeah. Full disclosure, I did, the end of my career was not the way I had envisioned it or planned it. I knew this, I was not going to be a lifer in the PD. I always had this thought in my head, because these guys, you've worked with them. I never wanted people to say, what's Mazur still doing around here? Taking up space, taking up a promotion for somebody else. I never wanted to be that guy. I always wanted to be productive when I was there. So I was not going to be a lifer, but I did. And by the way, people who know me know this. My intention was never to be chief. Quite honest, it was not to be deputy chief. That was not what I was focused on.
And that's the exact reason why you would never be chief.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
You deal with a lot of police departments. You know people that shouldn't be chief, and they get it.
Yeah. I mean, the promotional thing started for me when, I had a long talk with my dad and a mentor of mine, and you see some of the folks around that were able to make rank, and you shake your head, right? There were others who were fantastic, who were like, walked on water, but there were others that you just shake your head. So I said, well, at least I'll get to, I'll take this test, see what happens, Sergeant, and I could then make some impact on the good cops. And I got promoted. I scored well on the test, and then when I was at Sergeant, I had a great time. It was probably the best position you ever have, because you're still quasi one of the guys. You can go out and do police work, but you also have this ability to be able to lead people and find your own style of leadership. But then I saw the same thing at the next rank, and I was like, some of these people should not be wearing that bar. So I took the test for lieutenant, and I scored number 1 on the test. And let me tell you this first. Let me backtrack. I'm not a good test taker. I'm not one of these just independently super intelligent people that can just walk in. I work my ass off, honestly. I made a lot of sacrifices. I studied.
You take all those courses back in the day?
Oh, absolutely. And you spend a lot of money. Yeah. You spend time away from your family. And I remember, typically, we talk about it still, I spent a lot of summers away from my family because they would be at the beach and I'd be studying. So, I worked hard to get those spots. And with civil service, that's the one thing that you can do. You can study hard for the test and pass the test, hopefully. So anyway, got to lieutenant, and I just sort of, saw, hey, I can make more of an impact. But I wasn't chasing a promotion. I wanted better for my family, certainly more financial gain out of it, of course, but I wanted to be able to impact. I really wanted to and I didn't get off on telling people what to do. It wasn't like, oh, I wanted to be the boss. I can honestly look both of you in the eyes and say that never occurred to me. That was never my intent. I wanted to be able to impact the department. And, and I undertook a lot of projects and things that other people did not want to do in the agency. Not because I wanted to be like a super pleaser or anything like that, or, be in somebody's good graces. I was actually the opposite of that. I pissed a lot of people off, to be quite honest, because I had my opinions, but I took on a lot of things because when I was coming up in there as a patrolman and stuff, I looked at those things and I said, this policy or this process sucks. And
this could be fixed.
This could be fixed. And somebody's got to have the cojones to do it, or the effort, or the intention. And I said, what good am I if I complained all these years about this, this, and this? I get to a point where I can actually make impact, and then I fall in line with everybody else. I'm not going to do it. So I sort of became that guy.
But do you realize you took a job where you're trying to protect people who don't know how to protect themselves, can't protect themselves, or are looking for help? You took that job. So within your own police department, this is what I say about my police department. I always spoke up for things that I didn't disagree with, to the detriment of my career. Okay, let's be very honest with that. Okay. That's why it was chief's test, which was even worse. But I said, what kind of hypocrite would I be if I didn't speak up for things that were going wrong in my own department that I have the ability to change? So it's a natural progression. And if the people that don't like it, well, those were the people that shouldn't be in those positions.
Agreed.
Exactly. They were the people that you said you were looking at. You have some good supervisors and some bad supervisors. The bad supervisors were what I used to call the conformists. They just went along with the program. They got their sergeant stripes,
They're in every agency.
or they got their bar, or they got their captain bars, and they just kept going along with the program, and shit never gets fixed.
Mm-hmm. My father, and again, my mentor, one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Will Glass, who's a legend in the PD. He was a phenomenal canine officer. He
Wasn't Steve's father, was it?
No
Okay.
no relation. He was he's a bit of a legend. He's a legendary canine officer, SWAT team guy. He was a cop's cop. Like, image, in shape, treated people right. I mean, he was just the epitome of a professional.
He was a Goals magazine guy.
Yeah,
totally. And just treated people right. Truthfully, if he would have been our chief going back when he had the opportunity, the department probably would have taken a much different route, to be honest. And I'm not throwing darts at anybody else. I'm just saying that guy's superstar. So, and I think people who know him would agree 100% with what I'm saying. Anyway, he told me, as did my father, that you'll find that most people in the department at some point will probably compromise themselves to get what they want.
Oh, without doubt.
Wow, that is profound.
It is. It is. It stuck with me forever. And I'm not necessarily saying compromise themselves like in a dirty way, criminal way, maybe unethical, sure.
They'll say yes to something they shouldn't say yes to, usually.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it could just be to get, a better assignment or weekends off or a take-home car. I saw that. And it started to really become, when somebody points something out to you and then that's all you can see, like, hey, or you say, I want to get a red pickup truck. I really like a red, and then that's all you see is red pickup trucks. When I became attuned to sort of that personality and some of the culture, which is dysfunctional, not everybody was like that. There's a good portion of people who would do that. You can't help but see it everywhere. And you just have to look around. I'm not saying I was perfect. And that I did everything perfect, but I did not compromise myself to do those kind of things, and I stick to that today.
That's the tuning fork of law enforcement.
Yeah,
so when you're doing your tuning forks on your radar to make sure it's good, when you ding it, happens to everybody. You will just focus on that tone. Mm-hmm. You'll just it's in something in you, something about that tone, and that's the tuning fork of law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So you focused on what you saw, but you hit that tuning fork. And that's all you see.
It's a good analogy. Listen, you said it earlier. It's a much harder road to travel, to not comply. Now, look, I'm not saying that you should, be a nonconformist and fight everyone and everything. It's not what I'm saying. But you have to have principles. You have to have a personal code of honor that no one's going to bend. You're not going to allow anybody to, because then you don't have a personal code of honor.
Exactly.
That's why it's called that. PCH. That's what we call it today. And you got to have some principles. And, to my detriment, I had a tendency to stick to my guns. And I did this when I really felt passionate about a topic, or I knew my facts. I knew what I was talking about. If I didn't, to this day, I won't speak up. I mean, I'll sit back and learn more before I say something. But if I know what I'm saying is factual and I have the receipts for it, so to speak, I will not acquiesce in an argument. That's just how I am. And not just to argue for argument's sake. That's not what I'm talking about. Or just like to be a nonconformist. That's not what I'm pushing. But again, you have to have principles, because at the end of the day, I don't regret any of it. Maybe some of the battles I fought then, I probably might do a little bit differently. I wouldn't say I wouldn't fight the battle. Maybe I'd do it a little bit differently, maybe a little more strategically. But
diplomatically.
Yeah, that's the word. But I look back and I'm proud of sticking to my guns on these things. And I can look back and I can honestly say that I didn't know anybody any favors.
See, you know what though? There's some people out there that buck the system just for the sake of bucking the system.
Right.
Well, they're the problem identifiers. They're like, this is a problem. Well, no, you can't do that. You're like, that's a problem, but here's my suggestion how to fix it. It might not be right, but at least he's offering up a little bit of assistance.
But now if you come up with a proper solution to that, then I'll say, oh, you're a company guy.
But you're a dangerous man because of the way you approach that.
And because he's smart.
Correct. You're a dangerous, dangerous man. A lot. I'm not going to say all, because I know a lot of good police chiefs and a lot of good administrators. they want guys like you around because it elevates them. It makes them better. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. But there are some who get threatened by a guy like you. You're a bright, intelligent guy who likes to work and is a problem solver. Very, very. No wonder. No wonder you may have had a problem or two.
Because people feel threatened.
Correct.
See, like I said, I've said it a million times in the show.
That you're threatened by me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I gave you the spam dial today. I was fortunate enough to have, to me, what was the greatest police chief ever. Open door policy. If you had something, if you had a question, you just call him up on his cell. Chief, could I come see you for a minute? Come. I see problem A, B, and C. He's like, you know what? You're right. Because he could listen to the street guys and take their advice and not feel threatened by anybody.
Where you have somebody like me who just used big words around my chief just to watch him get red because I knew he had no idea what I was saying. But again, to the detriment of my career because I'm sitting there trying to poke the bear because I want change. I want change. That's why I got involved in unions and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing too. I mentioned my age. I was young. So I got promoted to these various ranks and I was the youngest guy at every rank. Now I had some peers who were older than me, who were very accepting. They loved me. They respected my father. They knew my father. But by this time, my father had retired. He retired in 2000. So he was retired. I wasn't like I was there with my dad. And my brother had actually pensioned out too on a medical. So I was the lone survivor, so to speak. But, you know, I definitely had peers who were great guys, but I also had some who I absolutely know that, you know, they took the stance of like, you know, settle down, kid. Kind of, you know, when you come up with an idea and, you know, I respected that to a degree, but I was like, you know, there was a couple times where, you know, I said, listen, I respect you've been around here for a while, but you have 2 bars and so do I. So, you know, where do you want to go with this? So that happened a couple times. Not all the time, but a couple times. And if they were listening to this, they would know who they are. But I did have one extremely, I mean, just, you know, probably the greatest mentor, you know, that I could have had. Will Glass, who I mentioned earlier. He was, you know, when I came on the job, he was my sergeant. He was one, you know, that quintessential, that sergeant out there, like chasing cars. I mean, you know, he looked out for the workers. He was, you know, making arrests, you know, foot pursuits. I mean, you name it. And he was, I mean, gosh, he was probably in his late 40s at that time. You know,
handlebar mustache. Because all you guys had handlebar mustache.
He had a thick, manly mustache. Will did, yes, and
70s porn mustache.
Good-looking guy, in shape. You know, martial artist. I mean, he had it all, right? So, and then you know, he sort of took me under his wing, so to speak, and he was my supervisor. You know, in various moments, or you know, throughout my career, and on the SWAT team. He was the commander of the SWAT team. I mean, he was out there doing what we were doing, and he, you know, I mean, he had to be in his, gosh, I want to say, you know, his 50s at this time. You know, in shape, just a super guy. He eventually retired as a deputy chief. He sort of got pushed out too. We had many character traits in common. He pushed the envelope. He was a principled man. He was a doer, and he didn't have time for people who didn't. So if you were one of those guys, you might not have a favorable opinion of him because you're threatened by him. But if you were a worker and a cop, he walked on water. He didn't act like that, but for a lot of us, he did. So he went up retiring. He came back as the public safety director. And I mean, he could have chose anybody that came in to work in his office, and he chose me to be the executive officer. So I got an opportunity to work for him at a high level as a captain of police. And he oversaw police, fire, EMS, emergency management, beach patrol. So I had all those things myself. At one time, it was about, I want to say around 750 employees that he was responsible for, and I was the executive officer. So everything that went through that office passed through my hands. So you can imagine, as a young captain now, not that people of higher rank were answering to me, because they weren't, but things had to come through the office, through my hands. And I respected that. I never used that even perceived authority to push it onto somebody else, especially someone of equal or greater rank. It just wasn't part of my personality. But I know that some people felt
you had a voice.
By that.
You had a voice now. You have a voice to enact changes that you saw throughout your career. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes the end of your career such a difficult thing, because now you're finally at that level that you've always wanted to get to, where you can enact that change that you want. You can make the place a better world for the people coming up through the ranks. And now it's time to retire.
Yeah.